New York City, 1964. A city pulsing with life, its lights, sounds, and movement a constant symphony. But beneath that shining surface, in the shadows, are stories that prefer to stay hidden. This is one of those stories, one that, even though it happened years ago, still echoes in the minds of everyone who hears it. The story of Kitty Genovese, a young woman whose cry for help was swallowed by the indifference of a city that never slept, but also never acted. Kitty Genovese, or Catherine as her friends called her, lived a simple life. She worked as a manager at a bar, surrounded by laughter and animated conversations, serving drinks and listening to the stories of others. She was 28 years old, filled with life, always smiling, generous and ready to help. She had not yet reached the peak of her dreams, but she was on the right path. She had friends, a family that adored her, and of course her people. But as often happens, life changes in an instant, when you least expect it. It was just another night, cold and rainy. Kitty had finished her shift and was walking alone through the streets of Kew Gardens, a quiet residential neighborhood in Queens, where life seemed to move at a slower pace than in the rest of the city. The wind blew fiercely, leaves scattered across the wet sidewalk, and the glow from the streetlights barely penetrated the darkness. Kitty, lost in her thoughts, did not notice the danger closing in on her. She didn't see him coming. She didn't hear him getting closer. The distance between the predator and his prey shortens. An unknown figure, seemingly ordinary, but with an inner darkness that drives him to seek victims in the night. Winston Moseley was no stranger to this, but Kitty had no idea. She had no way of knowing. It was fate that had chosen her, and fate that night was cruel. Could you look away if you knew someone needed help? Would you dare ignore a cry for help? That night in that neighborhood, no fewer than 38 people saw, heard, or knew what was happening. But every single one of them decided it wasn't their problem. No phone calls to the police, no intervention, just indifference. Kitty made one last effort. She ran, stumbling, searching for refuge at the door of her apartment building. But in the darkness, Moseley wasn't done yet. He returned, slow and calm, no hurry. The night had already consumed him, and Kitty just wanted to go home. By the time the police arrived, Kitty could no longer scream. Her life had faded away, but not before leaving an indelible mark. How could it be that 38 people saw this, and not one did anything? What kind of monstrosity is indifference? 38 witnesses, not a single one helped. On the night of March 13th, 1964, a scream was drowned in the indifference of a city. The tragedy of Kitty Genovese was a turning point, a painful lesson that reminds us the greatest horror isn't always in the hands of the killers. Sometimes it's in the ones who simply look away.